Yes, dear students, we have discussed single level inheritance in the last class, right? Yes. So when you inherit the base class private members privately, is it accessible in the derived class?
No, sir.
No,
No?
sir.
No, you are saying, right? Yes. Private members of base class, when the base class inherited privately, are not accessible in the derived class, right? But when you inherit the same base class publicly, those private members are accessible. Yes, they are accessible, right? They are accessible with private scope, right? Private scope in the sense in the same class you can access. It means if you have some functions in the derived class, within those functions you can access the members, right? The private members of the base class. Yes, but not through the object of the derived class, right? In order to invoke the the members of the base class through the derived class object, they must have to be publicly accessible in the derived class. Yes or no? So the scope rules I have defined in the last class with the table. I hope it is clear to all of you. So when the base class members with different scope they are defined, and the base class when inherited with different visibility mode like private, public, protected, uh, in what way the base class members are accessible, the scope of the base class members in the derived class, we have discussed with the help of a table in the last class. I hope that is clear for all of you. And another thing we have discussed, when you have constructors, right? When you have a constructor in the derived class, I hope we have discussed even the destructors as well. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So when you have the constructors in the base class, fine. The inheriting of the constructor process is very similar to that of class inheritance, right? When you are inheriting the class, how do you inherit class space class name colon? Then you give the base class name, right? In similar fashion, when you are defining the derived class constructor outside the derived class, then how do you define the? You don't have return type anywhere for constructor, so you have the class name, which means the derived class. Then you have the scope resolution operator. Then you will have the derived class name itself because it's a constructor, and then you have a colon followed by the base class constructor you will have, right? It means base class name you will be having, right? So the inheriting of constructor is the other way I can say invoking the constructor is very similar to that of inheriting the classes. But whereas when you have the destructors, fine, the destructor of the base class must have to be declared as a virtual destructor with the help of a virtual keyword. And in the derived class destructor, when the derived class object scope is going out, the base class destructor is automatically being called after the derived class destructor is called, right? Fine. Provided that the base class constructor must have been declared as a virtual. Fine. You need not to inherit the destructors in case of destructors. You just have to mention the base class destructor as a virtual one. Okay. Is that clear? I'm just giving a skeleton of the same here um, uh, with the help of a syntax. Fine. Let us say I have a base class, right? I can start it from here itself, no issue. Then under the public mode, right? The destructors and constructors you will give under the public mode, right? So under the public mode, here let us say I have a constructor. Fine. So constructor I will give like this, right? Base I mention like this, right? And destructor, how do I mention destructor? With the help of tilde, right? This is tilde operator, negation symbol that you find. Then you say base, right? I have some functions also, blah blah. I am not discussing about the functions. Functions and member scope I have already defined with the help of the scoping, right? And the writing of the functions is very similar to that of your normal function itself, right? But here I just wanted to bring your notice that if you have constructors and destructors in the base class, how those constructors and destructors are going to be invoked when the derived class object is created and of the scope is going out. So I have, let us say, a destructor here. Sorry, derived class here, sorry. See, this is my base class. In base class, I have, this is my constructor, right? And this is my destructor, right? Got it. Now, in the derived class, I can have, again, its members and all. But in addition to that, when I have a constructor in the base class, I must have a constructor in the derived class as well, right? So I have to define the constructor here. So I am writing here, right? You can see here, I have a default constructor here. So if I have a default constructor in the base class, then I must have to have a default constructor in the derived class as well, right? So this is the constructor here. And then here I have a destructor in the base class, got it? Then I must have to have a destructor in the derived class as well, right? So see, this derived class is not inheriting base class. When I can say that derived class is inheriting base class, when it is going to inherit with colon followed by the base class name, right? So here it was just a class here until I give this procedure. How do I inherit the base class as the derived class? Class base derived class. This is just a class. That's it, right? But if this class wanted to inherit this class, then you must have to have a colon here. Yes or no? Colon and then visibility mode. Visibility mode, if I do not give, by default it is private, followed by the class name, right? Base, right? Then what happens? This base class is inherited at the derived class. Yes or no? Fine. Now I can open the brace here and I'm writing all this under public mode, right? Okay, got it. So this is how, when I want to inherit a base class at a derived class, the procedure is colon followed by visibility mode followed by the class. If I do not mention the visibility mode, default is private. So this base class is inherited privately here. Fine, that's good. But then here I have in base class a default constructor. Then if I have a default constructor, I must have to have a default constructor in the derived class. And this default constructor of the derived class, when you are defining, fine. When you are defining, how do you define? You say that derive, right? You don't have return type, right? Derive, scope resolution operator, then followed by derive. Okay, here after writing this, you are again mentioning colon, right? It is nothing but to invoke the base class constructor here, right? So this is a procedure when you have the constructors, right? Now you can define the derived class code here, right? So if I have derived class code written like this, then what happens when I create an object of the derived class? Fine. As we know that when you create an object of a class, the constructor will be automatically called, right? So when I create an object of a derived class, this constructor is going to be called. But before it is being called, it is going to call whom? The base class constructor. Yes. Why you have said to invoke the same, right? Before it is being invoked. So the procedure for invoking the base class constructor for the derived class object before it is being called is the procedure with the help of this colon mentioned, right? So you will be writing colon followed by the base class constructor. So I hope this is clear to all of you. See, when I have a base class, I write class space whatever the class name, right? So now I have to, let us say, inherit the base class. How do I inherit? How do I inherit the base class at any derived class? Class name followed by colon followed by the class you want to inherit, right? So this is how you inherit, right? Good. Now, if I have constructors, right, in the base class, then the base class constructors, how they are going to be invoked when the derived class object is created is while you're defining the derived class constructor itself, you're taking the responsibility of invoking the base class constructor in this fashion. So whenever the object of a derived class constructor is created, what happens? Base class constructor is going to be called first, then derived class constructor is going to be called, so that the members which are associated with that particular derived class objects, which are not only the derived but as well the base, all are being initialized by invoking both this base and derived class constructor. Okay, I hope this is clear to all of you. Now the next thing is, if I have a destructor, right? See, in the base class I have a destructor. As we have discussed in the previous classes, that when you have a destructor, the basic advantage of having the destructor is to what? To deallocate the memory, associated with a particular object when the object scope is going out, right? When the object scope is out, it means it is not accessible. When it is not accessible, then the memory associated with that particular object is no more in use, rather, right? So if that is returned to the system, then that can be utilized for some other purpose, right? So that is the main idea behind having the destructor, to effectively utilize the memory. Fine. So I can have destructors even in the inheritance process as well. But how the process will take place is, when I have a base class destructor, and this base class destructor also must have to be called when the derived class object scope is going out, right? See, in the derived class object, in the derived class destructor, the code which I am going to write is to deallocate the memory which has been occupied by the derived class members. But you have the base class members memory as well associated with that particular derived class object, right? Which can be deallocated only when the base class destructor is going to be invoked. Because in base class destructor, you must be defining to deallocate the memory occupied by the base class members, right? So in order to deallocate the base class members memory, which is associated with a particular derived class object, the base class destructor only must have to be called. So in order to have that process to be fulfilled, what we have to do is we have to declare this base class destructor as virtual. Okay. Got it? Virtual is a keyword here. So I am giving this base class as a virtual. Now I can probably define the code of the base class destructor and the derived class destructor code as well. I can define. So in a very similar fashion, right? So derive double colon, that is scope of the operator, and say derive, right? I can have the code for deallocating the members memory associated with the particular derived class object, right? So you can see here, for constructor, invoking of base class constructor is the process being happened with the help of colon kind of thing, right? Whereas for derived class destructor to be invoked for the derived class object, we are implementing it with the help of this kind of fashion. The method is different, you can see. Method of invoking the base class constructor or destructor through the derived class object is different, right? I hope this is clear to all of you, right? constructors are going to be invoked with very similar to that of class inheritance process, right? Like how you have inherited the class. But destructor invoking in inheritance processes, the base class destructors must have to be declared virtual. So automatically the base class destructor is going to be called when the derived class destructor is called. Fine. You are not using this colon followed by, right? Virtual will suffice. Virtual itself will suffice. It means it will, virtual in the sense the operating system will take care of it here, right? Basically the memory management is being taken care by the operating system here. Yes or no? So, and here there is a small, change you can see while the constructors and the destructors are being called. As I told you that when I create an object of the derived class, let us say I have created an object of a derived class, right? Let us say D1 in main function. You have created an object D1, okay? So for D1, how much memory is going to be allocated? Memory required for members of derived class and members of base class. Fine. So when you create a derived class object, memory which is going to be allocated not only for derived class and as well for base class members, right? Got it? Base class members and derived class. For both the members, how much memory rather required is going to be allocated for this particular D1. Got it? So now what happens is, as we know that when you create an object, the constructor is going to be called. So here you have a constructor. Which constructor? Default constructor. So this must have to be called, right? But before the derived class constructor is being called, which is being called here, base class constructor is being called. When the base class constructor is called, what it's going to do, it's going to initialize the base class members, right? And then what happens? The derived class constructor is going to be called. Then what happens? The derived class members are going to be initialized. So now the initialization process is done. Fine. When the constructors are called, what they basically do, it initializes the object members. Yes or no? So all the members are being now initialized, right? Then if you have some functions in the derived class, fine, you can rather invoke those functions. Fine. You can invoke those functions, blah, blah. Okay. Now, let us say you have terminated the main function. Now, when you terminated the main function, what happens? D1 scope is out, right? What do you mean by scope? Basically, the part of the text in which it is accessible is said to be the scope of that particular variable. For example, D1. Hey, D1 is an object. Fine. It's an object variable, right? So the scope of D1 is limited to what? Limited to the block in which it was declared. Hey, you can see this is the block. In this block, D1 is declared. A block is started from here and ended here, right? So if I have any other block after this, fine. D1 is not accessible. Yes or no? D1 cannot be accessible. Got it? So when the scope is out, then the memory which has been available or associated with that particular object is still being retained until the execution of the program. So our main motive behind having this particular destructor is when the object is not accessible. I'll take another example here. Let us say in your main you can have any number of blocks, right? I can have one block, and then I can have another block. I can have, let us say, another block. I can have like this. I can have any number of blocks, block within a block, nested blocks we call it as, right? So let us say if I have created an object, derived class object, right here in this particular block, right? So what is the scope of this D1? Is limited to only this particular block. So is it accessible here? No. Is it accessible here? No. Is it accessible here? No. Yes or no? But then what happens? Until the program is in execution, the memory associated with this particular D1 is still retained. Yes or no? Memory is still retained till here also, but it is not accessible. When it is not accessible, then the memory occupied by that particular object is no more in use. So it is better if we can, you know, return it to the heap, you know, heap, then that memory can be utilized by some other person. Yes or no? That is the main motive behind the having destructors. Fine. So now what happens? Destructors are being called, right? So first, which destructor is going to be called? First, derived class destructor is going to be called. Then the base class destructor is going to be called, right? Whereas in construction process, you must have seen that in construction process, base class constructor is called first, then derived class constructor is called. Yes or no? But then in destructor process, what happens? First, derived class destructor is called and deallocate the memory as occupied by the particular derived class members. Then the base class destructor is going to be called because it is given as virtual automatically. It will be called by the operating system and free of the memory occupied by the particular base class members as well, which is associated with that particular derived class object. I hope this is clear. The concept is clear to all of you. See here, there is a base 1 class and its code is defined here within the basis. And class derive I have here. I am inheriting base 1. Okay. Then I can have some code to be defined inside here. And I am having, let us say this is derive 1. I am having another derive class, derive 2. Okay. So at this derive 2 class, I am inheriting derive 1. Okay. Now, tell me, when you are inheriting base 1 class at derive 1, the scope rules are going to be applicable as per the access specifiers you have mentioned for the base class members and visibility mode that you have taken while you are deriving the base 1 class at derive 1. Okay. So with that scope, base class members are accessible in the derive 1. And you have another derive 2 class here. So this derive 2 class is inheriting now derive 1 class, right? Now what happens when derive 1 class is inherited at derive 2? Derive 2 is going to have its own members. In addition to that, it will have derive 1 and as well the base 1 which have come here through this inheritance, right? So with the scope rules, applicable and the privileges that are accessible with the derive 1, they are going to be accessible here at the derive 2 by checking visibility mode. Private is not accessible. Then it is not at all going to be accessible in derive 2 as well. But let us say I have inherited base 1 class publicly. If I have inherited base 1 class here publicly, then these private members have become private here. Yes or no? The private members of base 1 have become private here. It means they are accessible in the derive 1 class. And let us say I have inherited this derive 1 class here also publicly. The base has still become private here in the derive 2. It means it is going to be accessible even in derive 2. But if I inherit this derive 1 class privately at derive 2, then the private members of the base 1 are not accessible here because they were limited with private scope here in derive 1. And the derive 1 when have been further derived at derive 2 with private inheritance, it is not accessible. So the scope rules is going to be applicable with the table that I have mentioned, even if you are going with more than one level, right? So since I have inherited one class at one level, and then this class is when inherited at another class, the level of the base one has become 2, right? This has been inherited at one level, that is, this is said to be single level for base one. And then when you have inherited derive 1 at derive 2, the at level 2 I have derived the base one, I can say, right? That is how I say it is a multi-level inheritance, right? So it means I can inherit the base classes at any level, right? And this derive 1 class can also be further multi-level. If I have, let us say, derive 3 class where I'm inheriting derive 2, then derive 1 also has become a multi-level, right? 2 levels, and base 1 becomes 3 levels. Yes or no? So that way you can have any number of level of inheritance. Fine. Like how you have a uh, tree structure, right? It's a kind of skewed tree, you can say, rather, right? Skewed tree structure. Right. Similarly, if I go with multiple inheritance, what do you mean by multiple inheritance? When more than one base class is inherited at a single derived class. For example, I have a base class, base 1 class, okay, and I have another base class, that is base 2 class, okay. Then I am inheriting both of these base classes at one single derived class. Derive colon visibility mode base 1 comma visibility mode base 2, right? So you can see in this example, I have one base 1 class, this is a base 1 class, this is base 2 class, and it derived the class, okay, we are inheriting how many classes? Base 1 and base 2. If you are inheriting multiple classes, how do you separate it? With the help of a comma. Got it? With the help of a comma, you are going to separate it, right? It means I can have any number of classes to be inherited at a single derived class. It means if I have base 3 here, then I can even inherit the base 3 here. VM base 1 comma visibility mode base 2 comma visibility mode base 3. So in C++, you have this particular feature which probably helps in very complex kind of real-time problems to make it more solvable, right? So multiple base classes. Here, these base classes can be simple base classes, or it could be derived classes also. Fine. Got it? So I say when you are inheriting multiple base classes, more than one in the sense multiple base classes. When you are inheriting multiple base classes at a single derived class, then I say it is a multiple inheritance. Okay. I hope this is clear to all of you. Now, the scope rule is going to be defined as per the table that we have mentioned. So it means, for example, if I have here, let us say, some private members of base 1. Now, the visibility mode of base 1 you have given as private. Then private of private cannot be accessible. But if the visibility mode is private, let us say, the private becomes private here. Yes or no? Similarly, in base 2 as well, if I have private, public, protected numbers, fine. And I have inherited base 2 here, let us say publicly, then as it is, you will get with the same kind of scope. But if I am inheriting it private, then private cannot be accessible, but public becomes private here, protected become protected here. And if I have inherited protectedly, what happens? Private become private, and protected become protected, public become protected. Yes or no? So the scope rules that is defined with the help of table, they are going to be applicable, you know. I hope this is clear to all of you. Now we'll see hierarchical inheritance, right? If the base class is inherited in a tree order, hierarchically, then it is said to be hierarchical inheritance, right? What do you mean by tree order, right? You are studying data structure trees, right? I have, let us say, one base class. And this base class is inherited at derive 1 class, and at derive 2 class. This is how the syntax diagram of the inheritance looks like to be. The arrow will be towards the derived class always, right? And this derived class is further inherited at, let us say, derived 1, 1 and derived 1, 2, okay? Similarly, this derived 2 class has been inherited, let us say, at derived 2, 1 and derived 2, 2, okay? Got it? This is a kind of tree you can see, right? Or we call it as hierarchical inheritance. So the base class is inherited at derive 1 and derive 2. And this derive 1 is inherited at derive 1, 1 and derive 1, 2. This derive 2 is inherited at derive 2, 1 and derive 2, 2. And this derive 1, 1 can be further inherited at derive 1, 1, 1, derive 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, like that. I mean, you can have multiple classes, as well, at which this derived class can be inherited, rather, right? See, this is said to be the root or parent, and these are its 2 childs, right? And this child has been further inherited. When it is further inherited, and these are said to be its childs, right? And this child, when further inherited, this is said to be parent of these 2 child, right? So, and this process can go on generation by generation, okay? This is level 0, this is level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. I can have any number of generations, right? generations of C, right? Grandparent property will be inherited by parent, and parents' property will be inherited by children, and their property will be inherited by their children. Like that, it can go on, right? It can go on generation by generation. Yes or no? So same kind of approach we can bring here in the programming, right? With the help of this inheritance. The main motive behind inheritance is the same, right? We wanted to, allow the access of the root data at different levels with the scope defined, rather, right? By restricting it with the help of the privileges that you wanted to, rather. When the inheritance is increased level by level, you can probably reduce the scope or reduce the privileges, because what happens when the grandparent property is inherited by a parent, the grandparent may have two child. He may distribute his property in his two of his kids. Yes or no? And they will get some part of his parent, and that, of course, that particular property in the sense I am saying it is data, other functions, rather, right? Data and functions are said to be the properties of the particular class. So these properties can be further inherited. So when that particular parent, the kid now become parent when when it has been inherited at its child. So this child, the child of the first parent, when they inherit, the grandparent property that this child will get is very less. Yes or no? But whereas his own parent property he may get more, but his grandparent property he will get less, because it is going to be divided across now siblings, right? Their siblings. So obviously the scope will be limited. That's how the scope is. You can see limited it with the visibility mode, right? So that way the privileges are going to be rather restricted level by level when the base class is being inherited at more than one level, right? From generation to generation. Now the next one is the hybrid inheritance. See, as we have discussed in the inheritance chapter, that inheritance can be classified in C++ into 5 kinds, right? Single level, multi-level, multiple, hierarchical, and hybrid. Yes or no? So we have seen single level in the previous class itself with an example we have demonstrated it as well. Multi-level, we have seen the concept of the same. Multiple and hierarchical we have seen. Now the hybrid. What do you mean by hybrid? It is a combination of more than one type of inheritance. It is a combination of more than one type of inheritance, in the sense that if I combine single level, multi-level, multiple, and hierarchical, right? Or if I combine multi-level and multiple, also said to be hybrid. If I combine hierarchical with multi-level, is also said to be hybrid, right? It's a combination of multiple types of inheritance, right? So now let us look at one example of a hybrid inheritance here. If I have one base class, base 1, let us say, and this base 1 class is inherited at, let us say, base 2. This is said to be single level, yes or no? And let us say I have another base class said to be base 3. And now let us say I am inheriting both this got it. This is single level, and this is said to be multi-level, and this is said to be multiple. So how many types of inheritances I have in this particular example? I have single level, multi-level, and multiple. Yes or no? I can have hierarchical also by doing a small modification in this. If I go like this, base 1 I have, which is being inherited base 2 and base 3. It means this is said to be what? Hierarchical. Now this is single level, this is hierarchical, this is multi-level, and this is multiple. Got it? This is single level, and this is said to be multi-level. And this is said to be what? This is said to be multiple. And this is said to be what? Hierarchical. Yes or no? Since I have more than one type of inheritance, I say it is a hybrid. So in this example, you can see all inheritances are covered. Single is there, multi-level is there, multiple is there, hierarchical is there. Examples are also possible, right? Having all type of inheritances is a single example, right? I hope this is clear to all of you. Yes? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
If I give one example based on this, can you do it? Shall I give an assignment on this? Take one employee class, write a program to implement the following inheritances. Okay, so let us take one employee class here. So this employee class consists of employee number, employee name, and it consists of, let us say, without using constructor, you do it first. Okay, just take some functions here. You have read and you have a print function, right? There are two functions you have. This is one class you have first. Yes, and this is going to be, let us say, inherited at another class called compute. So this compute class consists of, let us say, gross salary, comma, net salary. Okay. And it is having one function in data, and it is having another function called out data, right? Okay, so I'm having another class called salary here. the such as basic, HRA, DA, PF, IT, okay, and let us say CCA, City Compulsory Allowance. So now, in addition to this, you have some functions, let us say read salary. And you have print salary. Now you are inheriting this class as well here, right? Is it visible clearly? You have one class employee. This is one base class in which we have two members, enumber, ename, and it is having two functions, read and print. You have another class salary, which is consisting of basic, HRA, DA, PF, IT, CCA, is having two functions, read salary and print salary. And both of these base classes are being inherited at compute, right? Compute salary, right, is another class you have. So at compute salary, you are inheriting both employee and salary class, and it consists of gross salary and net salary, two attributes or two members, and then it has two functions, in data and out data. Okay. So now what is that you have to do is you have to create an object of compute salary class. Compute salary class object you have to create, and with the help of object of the compute salary, you are able to input the data of employee and his salary attributes, and with the help of out data, you are computing the salary, and then you are computing the salary and outputting the employee number, name, and his salary details as well. Okay, this is all you are going to do it. So in order to do that, what is that you have to do? Can you please let me know what kind of visibility mode is required here, what kind of visibility mode is required, and what should be the access specifier here, and for this, and for this, and for this, right? And what will be the access specifier of this and this, rather, right? Of course, these are going to be anyway private and public, but then do you need here, instead of private public, some more changes here, or what type of inheritance you need here, what kind of visibility mode, right, you use here? Can any one of you tell? Because I want all the functions of this, both the base classes, to be invoked from the derived class functions. This means in data is going to call what? In data is going to call read of this function. In order to invoke the read function here in data, this read must have to be available, at least with private mode, right? Private mode. So in that situation, the visibility mode with minimum of private privilege is required. Yes or no? The public, this is, let us say, public, private segment, they can be accessed here. You can give these are private. This they are accessible in read, of course, right? They are accessible in read. So via read, you will be reading enumber and ename, and via print, you are going to print enumber and ename, and they can be accessible here in the out data, rather, right? So access print here in out data, and since print is public and privately inherited, so they can be accessible within the class, within the class functions. Like in out data, you can access it, no issue, right? But here in this case of salary, I want this attribute directly available here in this class, because when I am calculating in out data, formula I am using for gross salary is gross salary equal to basic plus 120%. 120% in the sense 120 by 100, right? 120% of basic, which is nothing but DA rather, right? DA equal to, you need to first calculate DA and all separately. I'm giving the formula, but I'll give it separate instead. Give it directly, I'll give you separately. Okay. See, in one example, which I have probably posted in assignment, I have mentioned the formula for all this DA and all. DA will be some percentage of basic. Let us say it is 110% of basic. So how do you calculate 110 into basic by 100, right? Let us say HRA is 30%. Then how do you calculate 30 into basic by 100? Yes or no? And let us say city compensatory allowance 1250, let us say, okay. And now what is that we have next is PF. PF, let us say, is some 1800, okay. So just give us 1800. Then IT is going to be varied based on the slab. Let us say it is 30% of gross salary and above the 20 lakhs annual income. Let us say it is 15%. Okay, it's better 15%. 15% of, actually we have to take all possible conditions here based on the gross salary that you get, right? If gross salary, let us say, is greater than, you can take all these variants, but now I'm not suggesting you to go for it. We can add these constraints afterwards, but let us take here directly with some uniform structure. Let us say it is 15%, okay? So 15% of gross salary. So how do you do that? 15 into GS by 100 will give you what? IT. Yes or no? into GS by 100. Then now your formula for GS equal to what? Basic plus DA plus CCA. These are the accumulations, right? Then deductions are net salary. How do you get the net salary? By deducting the deduction from the gross salary. Gross salary minus PF minus IT, okay? You will get net salary. So in order to get the net salary and gross salary, which is available as the attributes of compute salary, you need these members to be directly available here, yes or no? Because I want to calculate the salary in the out data function. In out data function, after I calculate only, then you're going to print all that, right? So in that case, in order to calculate gross salary and net salary here, you can see these attributes are required to be made available directly in the derived class. If I declare this as private, then what happens? Private, and if I have inherited this privately, private or private, they are not accessible here. Yes or no? So in that case, what is that I should do? The visibility mode, either it should be public or it should be protected. Yes or no? If I give this as private, and let us say these functions are public, okay. If I give very similar, because this is our usual practice, no, generally to declare the data members under private and functions under public. So the same kind of approach I have followed in both of these base classes. But then when I'm inheriting this base class, even with private mode, my work will be suffice. But when I am trying to inherit salary class here at compute salary, you can see I should be able to either inherit publicly or protectedly, because I need these members to be made available directly here in this function. Okay, if I inherit privately, what happens? They are not accessible here. So if I inherit publicly, they are accessible with private scope. So in that case, I can access this here in out data function, and then I can calculate the gross salary and net salary with the help of this particular formula. Yes or no? So now when you are writing the compute salary class code, These are going to be, of course, private. These are private, and these are public, of course. And here in data, what do you do? First, you call the read function, then you call the read salary function. Okay. After read, you will be calling what? Read salary function as well. Okay. You're calling both read and read salary here in data. Can you call? Yes, sir. You can call, because read was public here and privately inherited, then it has become private here. It means it can be accessible in data, and this read salary is also public now, and publicly inherited, so they are directly available. So I can access this read salary in data. So in data function, you will be calling read and read salary both, and in out data, first you will be computing the salary, gross salary, net salary, okay, with the help of this formula that I have defined. Then you are going to call print and then print salary. Okay, you are going to call the print salary as well here, right? After print, and then in the gross salary and net salary in the out data. So in out data, first you call the print HRA, DA are going to be calculated, and PFIT also is being mentioned here, right? Only basic you're going to read. In the print salary, you'll be printing all this. Okay. In compute salary, what happens? You first going to have an in data function called the read and read salary. Then in out data, first you calculate. Yes or no? When you calculate, what happens? HRA, DA, PF, IT, all this will be made available. So use this PF value, use this DA, HRA, CA formula, use this PFIT values and calculate GSNS. Once you calculate all this, then you call the print salary. What happens? After you calculate, when you call the print salary, what happens? All these details will be made available. But before print salary, you call the print function to print the employee number name. First you call the, so the procedure in out data is first you will be calculating, computing, right, with the help of the formulas. Then you will be calling the print function. Then you will be calling the print salary. Then you will be printing what? GS and NS. Okay. So then what happens in the main function? If I just create only the compute salary object and I call in data function and out data, this will suffice my work, right? That's it. My main function will be very simple. So you can see here, compute salary is the only object, and we are just calling its own functions. But then what is happening? All other two classes functions are also being here performed at the compute salary, right? Because they're all being inherited here, and their members memory also being allocated here with the derived class, that is compute salary object. And with the help of the derived class functions, wherein we are invoking the base class functions as well, are going to perform the formulas and then calculate the gross and net salaries. Thereby you are printing all the details of employee, which is all salary details. Can you execute this program? Can you write and execute? Otherwise we'll discuss in the next class. Fine.